I can swap.
Right, guys, we'll get underway for the submission subcommittee, 28th of April. I'll get Janine to open us for the Karakia, thanks.
Te hoi kupu, Whakapu hoi ki te tonga, ki a mākina, kina ki uta, ki a mātara tara ki tai. E ki ana te atakura, te teo, te puka, te hau, and te hei.
Thank you. You have no apologies.
Stu says he can't.
We're muted.
Shouldn't be. Brenton's unmuted. Can you not hear us, Stu?
Can you hear us, Stu?
You're muted.
You're muted, Stu.
Can't tell because you can't see his lips moving.
Circle comes up, doesn't it, when he's they make a noise.
I think he can hear us. He's not responding. Should we type to him to say something?
I've typed to him.
Right.
I'm going to unmute myself and see what happens.
He's
Oh.
on mute.
Yeah.
Right now, Stu?
Yeah, all good now. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know what happened then. Thanks.
Confirmation of the agenda. Pamela, second, thank you. Chris, all those in favour? Opposed? So carried. Are there any disclosures of interest for anyone on any of the items before us today? Shaking of heads is a no. I think we can take the health and safety statement as read. We've all seen it a number of times and we only have staff and ourselves in the room. General items. We've got a couple of submissions here in front of us. Are you leading the charge on this?
Just hand over to Jane, I think. Well,
Jane?
it's straightforward. I think council's all considered the sort of standard template response around waters, and then there's one that has a few more options.
Thank you. Jane?
The first report, the committee with 4 submissions in relation to proposed water delivery models. This has been prepared using the submission that was already approved for Hamilton City Council's consultation by Strategy and Policy Committee on the 14th of April. So happy to take any comments on that.
Are there any comments from anyone? As Jane mentioned, we did see this come before us at Stratton Poll for the Hamilton one that we submitted on, so it is the same template has been used, outlining the same items. You happy to move? Thanks, Chris. I'll second. All those in favour?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.
You're gonna try and beat the record, aren't you? I don't know.
Got to find the process.
Here, if I could just make a comment. No.
No, you can't.
Sorry.
No other correspondence will be entered into. Right, next item. Jane again, yes.
Second report on the agenda, so through April and May, a number of Waikato councils are consulting on their 2025-26 annual plans. And in some cases, they're out some of those councils that deferred last year. The corporate planning team monitor these consultations and where it is appropriate, the council to make a comment. Feedback is drafted by subject matter experts. Submissions have been prepared for Waitomo and Rotorua Lakes district councils. Appropriate thought be lodged. They are due for April and 5th of May. Draft submission for Rotorua Lakes District Council is on page 23. This includes comments in support of priority investment in infrastructure. And then following that is a draft submission for Waitomo District Council, which is on page 26. And the staff have provided some feedback on options for the seawall. And these comments have been provided by the Regional Resilience and Policy Implementation team, and we do have some representations in the room to speak to that as well. If I understand Council might have some additional comments to make. Yeah, happy to just open up for questions and comments.
Right, we'll go to questions. Noting, Stu, that we saw your email come through. So do you want to talk to your concern around Mokau seawall to start with?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes. Good as gold.
Yeah, thanks. So I understand, Tracy, you shared my comments with the team, and I don't know if you or Warren had any comments, but I think what you said is right. I just wondered whether we should be a bit firmer with some of our comments. But look, given you've said your team have seen what I've suggested, perhaps it might be better for you to provide some commentary.
Yeah, Tracy's not actually in the room, Stu, but obviously staff are here, and I take it have seen your comments. Yes, yeah, Jane's nodding. So perhaps any feedback from staff?
We need to know that.
Yeah, sorry, just through you, Mr. Chair, just can we ask Councillor Kneebone just to elaborate, because I wasn't a party to any email, so I'm just not sure what issues you raised.
Sure, hang on. I'll just bring it up so that I get it right. But basically, you're probably familiar with the history of the seawall down there, and the particular one. Just checking with staff, my understanding, this one they're talking about is quite separate from the one that the landowners are wanting to rebuild as on the back of that prosecution. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So this one's been in a state of, as I understand it, a state of disrepair for years, and now they're deciding to consult on rebuilding it. And it kind of seemed to me that the consultation seemed rather casual given all of the issues that are involved. For example, they're saying in their consultation that there's no guarantee that's going to be no guarantee it'll work or survive very long. It's going to be costly. They're saying there may need to be a resource consent, which I find a pretty weird thing to say. I would have thought, acknowledging that the coastal plan is being reviewed at the moment, the regional coast, the New Zealand coastal policy statements is pretty explicit that seawalls to protect private housing and that sort of things are discouraged. So it's never going to be a permitted activity, for want of a better word. Yeah. So I guess my questions were, Pamela, just do we need to push it a little bit harder? It just feels to me like the district council have been a little bit economical with some of the facts behind their consultation. They're proposing to rate the whole, well, one of the options is rate the whole community to pay for it, you know.
Did the staff any comments to that, Alejandro?
Yeah, thank you, Stu, and thank you, Mr. Chair. We did get a comment, so we prepared potential wording to do two things. So one is address Councillor Kneebone's comments, but trying to steer away from the specifics of consenting. So we're trying to manage the dual role of regional council as a submitter, bearing in mind that the specifics of the proposal, once an application is submitted, will determine the consenting pathway. For renewals, if it's for repairs, if it's something that already exists, and if it's of a certain entity, you normally wouldn't require consent. However, this one is in a state of disrepair. So what we decided to do was suggest the following wording. So it's focusing on risk mitigation via structural defenses is likely to create an expectation in the community. This can be carried out long term. However, we note that the projected increases in erosion rates and sea level rise will make the cost prohibitive for the community in the long term. So being consistent with the messaging that we shared with them during the public meeting, where Sue was present, and leaving the first part of that paragraph 9, which is on page 27 and 26 of your agenda pack, that talks about New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement requirements.
Yeah, Bruce.
Yeah, again, I'd like further comment from staff really around this. I mean, I've walked that coast over the last 3 years on multiple occasions. I've been down to the point, I've had a look at what's going on down there. I mean, from a basic point of view, I think this is a waste of money to persist with that seawall. And so I'm just interested in what the staff think about the rate current, because it's not just about long-term changes in sea level. It's about what's been happening there in the last few years, which is pretty amazing, really, when you go and have a look at it. So I'm interested in what your coastal staff think about an investment in a seawall, given what's been happening over the last 3 to 4 years.
Say my words very carefully. It's probably a poor investment. But I think understanding, in terms of the wording here, understanding the bigger picture, I think is really quite crucial to understand how this proposed or replacement or of the small seawall is just at the end of Point Road. So it's not the whole stretch of the Morco spit. So I think that you could spend, $900,000 on the end. It's not going to protect the rest of the spit. And I don't think that's quite clear in the information that's been provided by Waitomo District Council. So there may be some.
That's exactly the point I'm trying to make, because
the
magnitude of the change that's occurred from the point along the whole of that coastal stretch for several kilometres is just enormous. And have they really told the community what they're potentially investing in here?
And just one other point on the back of Bruce's too. I hear you there, Rick. Thanks. It's good. My understanding that this wall has been in a state of disrepair for 10 years plus, hasn't it?
So we need to be quite clear on which wall we're talking about. So it is just the wall at the end of Point Road, which was constructed in 2015. And so that, which is 10 years ago, just under 10 years ago. So it hadn't been maintained, and so it's now out of a state of disrepair. And that's what this option A and B is to either fix it and maintain its sort of its current level of service or a different level of service, or remove it. So it has been hard to know whether it's been effective, because again, with the nature of erosion there, it probably hasn't been as tested as what it could be. And that area is quite dynamic. So you're going to have the sand in front coming and going. I don't know quite what the state of it is at the moment, but that portion, I think, is what they're talking about, And so, yeah, going back to your question is, you're going to protect that little bit, but it's not going to protect the rest of that spit. So in terms of a cost-effective approach to managing risk along that whole spit area, as what we've put forward here is understanding the bigger context of the risk management of that spit, because I think, and again, going through the process, and Alejandro might want to jump in here, going through the process here in terms of, look, if I do get the funding, they will need to do a more comprehensive resource consent. We would expect that resource consent would look at the larger aspects of that spit, and in terms of the potential mechanisms for that little bit of seawall at the end to be outflanked.
That's the thing.
All right. And so is that spit going to, is that seawall or that protection of the end of Point Road going to be sufficient to maintain a particular level of service for the rest of that spit? And I think that's probably the better process to get into the detail. Right now, I think I can see what Waitomo are trying to do is to go out to the community, gauge from the community whether they think doing something is worthwhile. I think in terms of that something, in terms of option A of maintaining what's there, still needs to be investigated further, and that would be through the resource consenting process. Is that right, Alejandro?
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
To you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Chair.
Yep, that covers it. And I do think you have articulated in the submission there more adaptation pathways further down the track and that sort of thing. So as you say, and they are definitely only focusing on that little point end there. So at this stage,
But
where that sits.
I do wonder, Alejandro, that, looking at the information that's provided, if someone was sitting in Tikawiti or somewhere outside of Morpeth, the perception that the seawall is going to cover and protect the whole of the spit as opposed to a little bit at the end, that information probably isn't quite as clear. A map would help to say what it's.
So yeah, and that's kind of where I'm going. I just want to make sure that that we're, I guess, undertaking our responsibilities in terms of the knowledge we have to make sure that to help them to make their community aware of what they're agreeing to here. But I acknowledge what you're saying. Until we get into that process, Rick, we're not really going to know that. But yeah, that's really where I'm coming from. It just feels to me like it's, given what they're asking of the community, it's a somewhat naive sort of proposal, for want of a better word. Yeah. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Yeah. Even a map, I think, would always be useful. But even if they stated the length of the seawall, which is only 30 meters, as opposed to the whole sort of 300 or 400 meters of the spit, I think that would also provide some context.
It also helps people understand the cost per meter.
Exactly.
Linear meter.
Was there not I thought there was a map in their consultation document. I thought I'd seen a map. I could be wrong.
No.
There was nothing in there.
Well, there's a map there, but that's only of the proposed rating area, Warren, not the
Okay, that's the map. Yep.
not the wall. Yeah, and when you look at that map, the wall part's just about not even an inch of it. Would that be right, Rick? It's tiny, eh?
It's very tiny. I don't know.
Yeah.
Warren, but it's just showing the rating area.
Oh, yeah.
And
Something
then-
to proposed.
And the
Yeah.
wall's actually
Just a tiny little piece there, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Pam.
And
I'll go to Pamela, Stu.
I just, I think you raised some really good points here, Councillor Kneebone, and I just wanted to suggest that perhaps our wording could be stronger. In paragraph 7, we say we encourage Waitomo District Council to consider undertaking a wider community adaptation project in collaboration with WRC. I think that we could strengthen our wording on that and perhaps give examples of the other where we are already partnering up with other TAs and where we're finding positive outcomes coming out of those conversations. And the more we do that across the region, then the more consistent our approaches will be in our various communities. So I'd like us to be a little stronger in that.
I would just note we have had feedback from staff on our capacity in that adaptation space and the fact that we have looked at turning down some councils in the meantime. So to encourage another one too.
I'm aware of that, but this is a situation where there's a community of not very many ratepayers who could waste a whole lot of money. When there's a larger picture to look at, I think should Waitomo District Council approach us, I would be really disappointed if we weren't to support them. And that's just my opinion, but in the grand scheme of all of the areas that we could help, they are very high on the list, I would say. But I note the fact that the staff have raised the resource issues. But I just think that it's really well put what Pamela said, a little bit stronger, because it's obvious that they need to do something here. Or it just becomes difficult.
this community has traditionally had very little from the regional council. They largely get forgotten about,
I like the idea of just detaching the examples, because even if Waitomo doesn't just for more assistance, they can look at those examples and just see what others in the region have done.
It will give them an idea of timeframes as well. You can look at a process and how long it could potentially take and the cost involved.
If I could add to that one, just because we're on that topic, I would like in paragraph 5, because I know that this will get copied into all the other submissions, it's being a bit more upfront that it is their conversation to lead. We talk here about we're encouraging them to fund these activities, but there is actually a mandate on them to lead and us to support. If we could bring that through, that'd be good. Because the councillors don't actually know this in all the different districts. And this is our chance to speak to them directly. Had a couple other points on the other sections, but if you guys want to keep talking about the seawall.
Is there anything else on the seawall? I think staff have captured the comments on the table to date. So yeah, moving on to any other topics within that submission. Yeah.
Under the waste one, paragraph 10 to 12, I thought, would it be worth referencing our strategic document, the waste documents that we have? If you're talking about their waste minimisation plans, but they obviously ours. There is still a mandatory date for the curbside organic collection. Let's mention that again.
That's been removed. The coalition government took that out.
Oh, I couldn't remember. I just wasn't sure if it got pushed or, but that's fine. And then the regional spatial strategy, I think we could bolster that with a few comments of why it's in their benefit to be part of that. It seems very brief, and we're basically just saying, hey, with all your limited resources, we encourage you to make resources available for this thing, but I don't think we're strong enough on selling why we want them to contribute to this thing. And obviously, even any kind of indication of that would be proportionate per capita, or would it be like future proof, would it not? Any kind of commentary to give them an idea of what we're actually picturing here would be more than what we're currently giving. Yeah, just if I was reading that, I'm not sure as a councillor I would know what to do next with that. But it is something I certainly hope our district and city colleagues engage in, so just want to sell it a bit. That was it for me.
Thank you, Jen. Yeah, I did. One of the only other ones I had was around that curbside collection, the fact that it's not mandatory any longer, and I just wonder if it's our position to comment to a council on something like that, not understanding the costs and that would be involved, imposing on them in that space.
Yeah, it could be good to have some more reasoning. I mean, that's why I wanted to reference our strategic documents, because that might be where this has come from, for example.
Yes, certainly. The team can certainly check with Valerie Bianchi, who normally provides the comment on these matters, and see the reasoning behind including the wording.
Thanks, Leandro. Any other questions, comments from the committee?
Oh, last one, sorry. Have we asked to be heard on any of these so that we actually present this submission to the district council?
That's something that's come up in our workshop this morning on making sure councillors have the opportunity, and that comment is put in that we'd like to speak to our submission, which
That has been included, that we would be presenting, and assuming that
the councillor will have the opportunities.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
I think that'd be really good. We need to keep fronting up to these DAs with these things, especially when we can tell these are very generic, apart from maybe the odd, like the seawall. You know, just receiving a very generic, you sent this to everybody, doesn't build a great relationship, whereas fronting up at least one or two councillors helps build that relationship. We are asking them for resource for a spatial plan. The least we can do is go front up, at least on Zoom, to speak to it and actually answer a question if they have them.
Right, we have a movement which will, obviously the comments will come back through myself and Tracy. You happy to move, Jen?
Yeah.
I'm happy to second. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. That brings us to the end of our agenda, and I'll get Dave to close with the Karakia. Thank you.
Nice. In here, mai te uru tapanui, ki awautia, ki mama, tinako, ti tinana, ti hinaro. I te arataka tū, koe rā e rongo, e whakairea ake ki a ronga, ki a tina, homie ui tai kia.
Thank you, Dave. Our meeting closed at 12:28. Thank you, staff. Yeah, minutes, what was yours?
7, I think.